Welcome back, everyone. More of day 4 of creation in a moment, but first, today's dose of grammar. Last time we talked about the 4 forms of adjectives. You remember them: tov, tova, tovim, tovot. And I promised you that even when the noun itself was tricky, the adjective would always tell you the truth. If the adjective ends with a, it's feminine singular. If it ends with im, it's masculine plural. If it ends with ot, it's feminine plural. The adjective has none of those endings, it's masculine singular. If the noun isn't tricky, the same thing applies. Hebrew grammar books love the word sus, which means horse, because it doesn't change no matter what you do to it. It's only one syllable, so the vowel can't disappear, and it's totally regular. And of course, it describes an animal which actually does have a sex for the grammatical gender to match. Sus, a stallion; susa, a mare; susot, mares; and susim, potentially stallions in the plural, but also just horses of either sex. Remember, the masculine plural is also the mixed plural. But some other nouns are a little more ornery. You remember Shana, a year, and I taught you the greeting for the Jewish New Year, Shana Tova, a good year. Since the adjective is Tova, you know that Shana is a feminine noun, so it requires a feminine verb and feminine adjectives. But the plural is not Shanot, it's Shanim. What adjective would you use to call these Shanim good years? Remember what Joseph did in Genesis 41:35? He told the Pharaoh that the good years were Hashanim HaTovot. Notice, by the way, that neither O sound in Tovot here is spelled with a vav. They're both spelled just with that O dot, that cholem, above and to the left of the letter. A cholem chaser, an O that's lacking, chaser, it's a vav. Once more, we know that shanim are feminine, and we'll use a feminine verb because the adjective is feminine plural, tovot. But it's not just the endings of nouns that can be surprising. Sometimes the shape of the noun becomes very different when you move from singular to plural. The longer and more complicated nouns won't cause you any problems. They tend to be very regular and obvious. It's the simpler and commoner nouns that are more likely to surprise you. The nouns that were on the scene long before someone marched in and said, "Okay, everybody, let's get ourselves organized." A whole host of simple, basic, everyday nouns said, "No thanks, we're fine just the way we are." Which means we have to learn them just as they were way back at the beginning of the Hebrew language. And that means memorization. There's no royal road to geometry and no 6-lane highway that will get you past the need to learn vocabulary. So we're going to buckle down and look at a number of the most common, non-obvious nouns in Hebrew, the irregular nouns. When you've had enough, we'll stop with nouns and take a look at the only irregular adjectives I can think of in Hebrew, the demonstratives, something to look forward to later in this lesson. Let's start with the noun ish. You remember our adjective examples: a good man, ish tov; the good man, ha-ish ha-tov; the man is good, ha-ish tov, or tov ha-ish. Now, ish is man in both senses of the English word, man as opposed to woman, or man as opposed to animal. Note that when ish means a person, it doesn't even necessarily refer to a human person. Even God is called in Exodus 15:3 an ish milchama, a man of war. But there's a matching word for a female human being, isha. It sounds like just what you would expect. Ish, masculine singular; isha, feminine singular, just like tov, tova. You may be smart enough and quick enough to think, aha, there must also be ishim and ishot. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but there aren't. To see why, let's have a look at the nouns ish and isha And we'll see that even they don't really match. Here they are. Notice that ish is spelled with a yud, and it always is, despite the fact that biblical spelling is usually quite irregular. The same goes for isha, always spelled the way you see it here, with no yud, but with the dagesh in the shin. Now a little something about that unusually careful spelling. If you're the kind of person that works by ear, by the sound of the word, you have to be very careful about biblical words that sound alike but aren't. And here are two. Isha, a woman. Isha, her ish, her man, that is, her husband. When you see the syllable ah at the end of a word with a dot in the hey, remember that hey is one of the letters that can't take a dagesh. This hey is not being doubled. Can't end a word with a double letter in Hebrew. This is that dot called mapik, meaning that it brings out the sound of the consonant hey. In isha, a woman, or tova, good, feminine singular, the hey is just there to tell you to pronounce that ah ending. Remember that Hebrew used this alphabet for more than 1,000 years before the vowel marks were invented. But when the hey has a mapik, that's the suffix her. Ishi, my man. Isho, his man. Isha, with a yud and a mapik in the hey, her man. Another example to help remind you to make this distinction. Malka, a queen. Esther HaMalka, Queen Esther. Malka with mapik in the hey, her king. Malko, his king. Malka, her king. For example, Joshua 8:2, what you have done to Jericho and to its king. Liricho, to Jericho. Ule Malka, and to her king, because cities are feminine in Hebrew. In English, we say its king. Again, Malka, with no mapik in the hey, feminine noun, queen. Esther HaMalka. Malka with a mapik in the hey, her king, her melech, just like Malko, his king. And now back to our two sound-alike words, which, as I pointed out to you, are also spelled differently to help you read them. Isha with a yud and with a mapik in the hey, her man, her husband, and Isha with no mapik in the hey, with the dagesh in the shin, a woman or a wife. Why is that dagesh there? When your Hebrew chops get up to speed, you'll know most of the time what a dagesh is doing in any particular situation. Here it represents a nun that has assimilated to the shin. In some other Semitic languages, that nun appears in the word woman, as if it were originally not isha, but insha. All of which is to prepare you for the plural of isha, so here it comes, nashim. Isaac had one isha, Jacob had 4 nashim. It's got that masculine sounding im ending, and the aleph of isha has completely disappeared, replaced by a nun. No way you could guess this plural, but nashim is the plural of isha. And as you can imagine, nashim is an incredibly common word in the Bible. And an even more incredibly common word in the Bible is the plural of ish, anashim. Once more, ish, anashim, isha, nashim. Let's make these people good so we can put an adjective in charge of watching them. A good man, ish tov. A good woman, isha tova. Good men or good people, anashim tovim. Very good people, anashim tovim me'od. And good women, nashim tovot. Isha tova, nashim tovot. Nashim are women, even though they end with im, which means that the good ones are tovot. All right, ish and isha, anashim v'nashim, these are extremely common words in the Bible. You've got to learn them as quickly and as solidly as you can. We're now going to look at a list of other extremely common, not quite regular nouns. You'll find this list in your course guidebook as well, but it may help if I talk you through it just to get these words in your ear. If it's just a matter of switching endings, a feminine noun with a masculine sounding im plural, like shana, 1 year, shanim, many years, or vice versa, masculine noun with a feminine sounding ot plural, I'm not going to bother to mention it here. You may be surprised, but you won't have any trouble figuring out what it means. But I do have to show you one of them, av, a father, avot, fathers in the plural. That's a pretty gendered word, frankly, like isha and nashim, and it has the opposite ending than you would expect. These im and ot endings, I think, must have taken on their gender characteristics not at the very earliest stage of the language. If that's not the explanation, I don't know what is. But it's not avim, but avot, that is the plural of av, father. The abbot of a monastery is related to this word. I guess he's the father of the brother monks. While we're talking about av, father, we might as well throw in aim, mother. This is quite regular with suffixes imi, my mother, imcha, your mother, imo, his mother, ima, her mother, plural, emot. In the Bible, it only occurs with suffixes and only 4 times. Emotam, their mothers. You can see it twice in Lamentations 2:12. In later Hebrew, the plural of mothers is imahot, but in the Bible, emot with a suffix. Now, let's fill out the rest of the family. First, ach, brother, plural, achim, and achot, singular, sister, achayot, sisters in the plural, which again only occurs in the Bible with suffixes attached. Again, ach and achim, brother and brothers, achot, sister, and achayot, sisters. Next, ben, son, bat, daughter. And here are the plurals, which this time are a little bit more obvious than the singulars. Banim, sons or children. Remember that the masculine plural is used for mixed groups. And banot, daughters. Banim, banot. Look at Genesis 5 and Genesis 11 too, and you'll discover that all of those guys begot banim uvanot, sons and daughters. U instead of ve because of the bump rule. It's before a bet. And vanot instead of banot because this is a beged kefet letter. So when there's a vowel sound immediately before it, the b sound changes to a v sound. If they were reversed, daughters and sons, which they never are, it would be banotu vanim. Again, ben and banim, bat and banot. And now an incredibly common word that you mustn't confuse with bat, which again means a daughter or a girl. It's bayit, a house. Irregular plural, batim, houses. Bat and banot, daughter and daughters. Bayit and batim, house and houses. In Exodus 1, the midwives of Egypt feared God. They did not kill the boy babies as Pharaoh had commanded. Vaya'as lahem batim, and he, that's God, made for them houses. Vaya'as, and he made, lahem, for them, batim, houses. One bayit, many batim. That's in Exodus 1:21. And I'm going to urge you, I'll stop just short of demanding it, But do your best to find a particular biblical phrase from your own Bible reading or that you know from English or that we learned together in the course that you can keep in your head for everything you're trying to learn. Example, Bayit Chadash, a new house. And a new adjective, Chadash. Yashan, old, Chadash, new. Or this one, Uvatim Mileim Kol Tuv. Houses full, Malay means full, houses full of Kol Tuv. Not every good, Kol Tuv, every good thing. Not Tov the adjective, good, but Tuv the noun, good stuff. And once again, daughter is Bat and Banot, Banim uvanot. House is Bayit and Batim, Bayit Chadash. And three more very common irregular nouns. As we saw a few minutes ago, cities are feminine in Biblical Hebrew, and that's because the word for city is grammatically feminine. City, ear with an ayin. Plural, cities, arim. Because of the ayin and the kamatz, this is one of those special patterns where the definite article is not ha, but he. The cities, he arim. One city, ir. Many cities, arim. Don't confuse he arim, the cities, with he harim, the mountains. Both of them very common words. Arim with an ayin, cities. Harim with a hey, mountains. Next, for our collection of body parts, Rosh, head. If you remember in the beginning, Bereshit, you'll recognize these three letters as the root letters of the word Reshit, beginning. The noun Rosh means head, which can also be the start of something, the first of something, Rishon, first. The Jewish New Year is called Rosh Hashanah, literally the head of the year. The singular is Rosh, but the plural is Rashim. Not because there are things with more than one head in the Bible, but because the word is used metaphorically for tribal heads and so forth. And finally, for our irregular but common collection, the word day, Yom. You remember the end of Genesis 1:5, Yom Echad, one day. Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Voker, Yom Echad. But many days is Yamim Rabim. One Yom, many Yamim. Not to be confused with Yam, a sea, like the Great Sea, Hayam Hagadol, the Mediterranean Sea, which is one Yam, many Yamim, with a Patach and a Dagesh in the first Mem, perfectly regular. But Yamim with a Kamatz is days, the irregular plural of Yom, a day. And while we're here, let's take a quick look at Rabim. You might not think the adjective meaning many would have a singular form, but it does. It means much. And the three forms Rabbah, Rabim, Rabot have a masculine singular form with a different sound. Rav. A great and multitudinous people, in Deuteronomy 2:10, is Am, Gadol, Ve-Rav. What happened? Rabbah, Rabim, and Rabot all have a bet with a dagesh, a double bet. And the masculine singular form would end with that letter, but you can't end a biblical Hebrew word with a double consonant. So the dagesh drops. And in some letters, like bet, that even changes the sound, not the meaning. Get used to this, please. Rav, but Rabbah, Rabim, Rabot. That is why Yamim, seas, like the seven seas, has no dagesh in the final mem in the singular yam, just one C. There's really a lengthened mem in that word, but you can't end a Hebrew word with a consonant that has a dagesh. All right, as I said, you'll find all these words in a list in the course guidebook. Let's take a break from this abstract grammar and morphology to look at another verse from day 4 of creation. You remember that in Genesis 1:16, which we looked at last time, God made the two great lights. Vaya'as Elohim et shnei ha'me'orot hagedolim. The great light for the governance of the day at Hama'or Hagadol, Lememshelet Hayom, and the small light for the governance of the night, Ve et Hama'or Hakaton, Lememshelet Halayla, Ve et HaKochavim, and the stars. Now let's take a look at the introduction to this day's work, Genesis 1:14, phrase by phrase. Vayomer Elohim, and God said, Yehi, let there be, Me'orot, lights, Birkia Hashamayim, in the firmament of the sky. Now, do you remember what happened in Genesis 1:4-5? God made a separation between the light and the darkness. Vayavdel Elohim ben ha'or uven ha'choshech. Vayikra Elohim la'or yom. God called the light day. Velachoshech kara laila. And the darkness he called night. That was on day 1. Here, on day 4, God made the two me'orot, the two lights in the sky, and why? Lehavdil, to separate, same verb as vayavdel in a different form, ben hayom uven halayla, to separate between the day and the night. Remember, Hebrew likes to repeat prepositions. We would never say in English between this and between that, but in Hebrew they do. It's curious why if God separated light and dark on day 1 and named them day and night, he now has to create these me'orot to separate them. It's even more curious why God said, Yehi me'orot, let there be lights, and then he has to make them. Vaya'as Elohim et shnei ha'me'orot. After all, when God said, Yehi or, let there be light, in Genesis 1:3, what happened was just Vayehi or. It didn't say Vaya'as Elohim et ha'or. So why does he say Yehi me'orot, but then Vaya'as Elohim et shnei ha'me'orot? This is one of the many cases in the Bible where we understand the words, but we don't necessarily understand precisely what they're expressing. All right, let's go on. What did God want to achieve by having lights in the sky? Vehayu, and they will be. We will talk about this verb form in detail another time. For right now, bonus points if you guess this was another form of the same verb as hayata and vayehi. No sweat if you didn't. They will be le'otot, for signs, that is, omens, ulemoadim, and for set times, that is, calendar dates for festivals and the like. Uleyamim veshanim, these you know, and for days and years, yamim and shanim. One yom, masculine noun, many yamim. One shana, feminine noun, many shanim. Im ending, despite the fact that the noun is feminine. One more time. God said, Vayomer Elohim, let there be lights in the firmament of the sky, Yehi me'orot birkia hashamayim, to make a separation between the day and the night, lehavdil ben hayom uven halayla, and they will be for signs and for set times and for days and years, vehayu leotot ulemoadim uleyamim ve'shanim. After this lesson, or even right now, is a great time to go back and refresh your memory by making sure you can read and understand Genesis 1:16, which we did last time, and also Genesis 1:1 through 5, which we read together 2 lessons ago. Because right now, it's time for us to look at the 2 sets of adjectives in Hebrew that are irregular. By irregular, in this case, I mean that learning tov, tova, tovim, and tovot, you couldn't predict the forms of these adjectives, and you wouldn't even be able to recognize them without learning them. So we're going to learn them now. They are the demonstrative adjectives. What is a demonstrative adjective? Well, this right here is a demonstrative adjective, and so is that over there. All of these are demonstrative adjectives, and so are those over there. The demonstrative adjectives in English are this and that, these and those. Note that unlike a normal English adjective, we have different words in singular and plural for these demonstrative adjectives. I'm good, she's good, all the guys and gals are good. Same word no matter whether you're talking about masculine or feminine, singular or plural. But with the demonstratives, we use different words in the singular than we do in the plural. This and that in the singular, these and those in the plural. Notice that we use 2 different pairs of words depending on whether the thing we're talking about is close by or far away. This and these are the near determinatives. That and those are the far determinatives. Hebrew has all of this too. Let's start with the near determinatives. Ze, this, masculine singular. Zot, this, feminine singular. And ele, these, just one plural form, never mind whether it's masculine or feminine. Ze, zot, and ele. Told you wouldn't know them unless you knew them. But all you have to do is learn these 3 words. Once you've learned them, they work like any other adjective. They must agree with their noun in gender and number. They're used as a predicate. This is the man. They're never definite. They're used as an attributive adjective, modifying the noun, these women. They must also agree with the noun in being definite. And anything you're pointing to always is definite. First, some examples of demonstrative adjectives as predicates. In Genesis 9:12 and 9:17, God points to the rainbow and says, Zot ot habrit, this is the sign of the covenant. Brit is covenant. Keshet, the rainbow, is a feminine word, so the demonstrative adjective is zot, the feminine singular word for this. And a quite common phrase in the Bible, this is the thing that the Lord commanded. Ze hadavar asher tziva Adonai. Very much worth your while to learn that word davar right now, a thing that happened, a thing that someone said. In our example, which occurs 8 times in the Bible, the thing that the Lord commanded. And it's a predicate. This is the thing. Davar is a masculine noun, so we use the masculine singular form, ze. But because this is a predicate sentence, we don't mark the adjective as definite. And the plural, these are the kings, ve'ele hamelachim, asher malchu be'eretz Edom. And these, ve'ele, are the kings, hamelachim. Remember, there's no present tense of to be in biblical Hebrew. You need to add it yourself. So these are the kings who reigned asher malchu be'eretz Edom, in the land of Edom, Genesis 36:31. The kings are plural, so we use the plural form ele. No difference if the noun is feminine. Ele hamitzvot asher tziva Adonai. These are the commandments. Ele hamitzvot. Singular mitzvah, commandment, that the Lord commanded. Asher tziva Adonai. Now let's look at some examples of attributive adjectives, adjectives that modify the noun. First one, bayom hazeh, on this day. Yom is a masculine singular noun, so we use zeh, masculine singular form of the demonstrative. But when the adjective modifies the noun, we always have to check to see whether the noun is definite or not. Remember that ba is hiding the combination be, ha, in the. So we also have to make the adjective definite. Ha, zeh. In fact, as I said, and it's obvious, anytime you use a demonstrative, you're pointing to something specific. So an attributive demonstrative should always be definite. Two more examples. This land, haaretz hazot, because eretz is a feminine noun. And these things, hadvarim ha'ele. All right, this and these are the near determinatives. Now we need the far determinatives. They are who, he, and heim. Strange as it may seem, they are also the third-person pronouns, he, she, and they. In that year, bashana hahi, all that day, kol hayom hahu, and those men, ha'anashim hahem. The feminine form hena is only used as a demonstrative once in the entire Bible. To sum up, this, ze or zot, these, ele. That, who or he, those, heim. That woman, ha'isha hahi. You should be able to find ze and ele in Numbers 22, and you can also find the plurals of ish and yom. While you're at it, look for who, both as a demonstrative and as a pronoun, because next time we're going to learn all the pronouns. See you then.